After a long wait, the 2026 budget proposal has been presented to a joint session of the National Assembly by President Bola Tinubu, and this was done on Friday. A breakdown of the budget estimates of 58.1 trillion naira reveals that 5.41 trillion naira is earmarked for security and defense, the single largest allocation in the proposed 2026 budget. Now, it marks the third consecutive year that defense and security spending has taken priority since the administration began presenting national budgets in November 2023. Tinubu emphasizes the need to invest heavily in security, saying it's at the center of national development, but stressing that such huge spending on security must yield results while also declaring war on terrorists, bandits, armed groups, armed robbers, and cultists across the country. Next on the president's priority list is education, with a chunk sum of 3.53 trillion naira. Health and social security coming third with 2.48 trillion naira, representing 6% of the total budget. Now, the 2026 budget comes with a deficit of 23.85 trillion naira, representing 4.28% of the gross domestic product. Now, it's also based on a parameter of $64.85 dollars per barrel of crude oil, 1.8 million barrels per day, and an exchange rate of 1,400 naira to $1. Meanwhile, the president is calling for the strict implementation of the budget, directing his Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, and the Accountant General of the Federation to keep to appropriate timelines. He's also declared an end to the era of multiple budgets, warning that there will be no room for excuses. Well, to help us break it all down, we have joining us right here in the studio eminent economists and public budget specialists, and I'm starting with Dr. Akin Ogunsola, who is an economist. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, and then we also have public budgeting specialist, Dr. Emeka Jikonye. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for joining. And let's start with you, Doctor. I mean, this is your area. So just talk to us about all the parameters the president has set, and he's issued a very strong one. And look, I operated 3 budgets before, but going into 2026, especially from March, that won't happen again. Should we take the president to his words?
You know, sometime this time last year, I was on your program, Newsnight.
Yeah.
And I didn't hide my pessimism that nothing will come off what has happened, and I'm happy that it's playing out. The question is, the president has once again continued this annual ritual of presenting the revenue and expenditure needs of government, projections or valuations of the revenue and expenditure needs of government for the year. The question is, what are the policy programs? What document? Because he has presented a document containing the revenue and expenditure proposals of government. What document has shown us the policy program those this revenue and expenditure are meant to achieve?
Well, how about the MTEF and the FSP?
You are still talking in
for
terms of
2026 to
finances.
2028.
You're not talking in terms of medium-term, that's what is the expenditure framework, right? You're talking within the framework of finance. I'm talking about public policy, which should drive the finances, because finance is not money. Let's break it down to the layman's language. This is money. Money is not an end in itself. Money is an instrument. It's meant to achieve. Who is giving us that element, those products money is meant to achieve? That's the first question from that element. We are not seeing any document in that.
Shouldn't the finance minister be doing that? Sorry, I just
because
in those days we used to see Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, come out after the budget presentation to break down specifically the projects that these monies are all targeted.
So where is the document? What I'm saying is, and it is beyond the purview of the finance minister. That thing lies with the president himself. One is, there are basic features of budgeting. There are basic features. One is coordination. Where is the instrument of coordination available to the president to start to say, look, these are the public policies we want to achieve? The second aspect of this is where this expenditure, this huge 58-point-something trillion you want to push into the civil service. What is the guarantee that you will achieve the objectives? The guarantees are not there. We don't have any element of budgetary performance monitoring. That's why you don't hear of budgetary performance in Nigeria at all. So as long as to the extent we have not gotten budgeting right in this country, national development will continue to elude us. Sorry, I don't want to waste too much of your time.
All right, I mean, let's hear from the Economists. There are lots of projections here, and of course, the president says he's expecting a total revenue of 34.33 trillion naira. Projected total expenditure is 58 trillion. Recurrent non-debt expenditure is 15 trillion. Capital expenditure 26 trillion. And budget deficit 23 trillion. What do you make of all these figures?
Yeah. In fact, when I just saw the president presenting the budget, I just sat back and I said, well, the Nigerian budgeting system over the years has been bedeviled with a lot of setting targets that are unrealistic, that are unattainable, and that are unachievable. Thank God the president rated himself that he performed poor.
That's in the 2025 budget cycle.
Even 2024, that is still extending to 2026.
Okay.
So he rated himself. So some of these targets, like another one that they have set now that I feel is unattainable is 1.8 million barrels per day. That is not achievable. Definitely we'll still have some revenues that will not be met. Then talking about...
Sorry, just before we continue, why do you say we can't achieve 1.83 million barrels per day? Because there's also a target to add 1 million barrels to that 1.8, making it 2.8 million barrels per day. That's what the government is.
It is unattainable. Okay, this one that they failed, the target was 2.09 million barrels per day. They had to withdraw this budget and adjust it again. So that's just clear view that these figures are not unattainable. What we have currently is 1.4 with a lot of struggle. And we all know that the year we are running into now is a political year, a year that we usually experience revenue leakage a lot because of politics. And so we don't see that chunk of oil being produced every day. That one is not attainable. But for the other statistics of the growth, yes, the growth, we might be able to achieve it. The interest, the inflation rate, averagely, we might be able to sustain it because of the achievement that the government is actually getting from the monetary policy aspect. We might be able to achieve that. Then look at the biggest one is the borrowing. The deficit is very high. The deficit, the borrowing of government keeps going high and high. Everybody keeps asking, why is it that government's borrowing keeps going up? You know, and now government has planned again to borrow a chunk of 20-something trillion naira.
That's 23.85
23.85.
And in 2025, it was about 13 trillion.
Yes, so can you imagine? So we are just getting ourselves into more problems. And that's why we are coming to say these statistics, these parameters are too high and unattainable by this administration.
Okay, Dr. Jikonye, I mean, this budget is finally coming late, having, done the January to December, and within this last year, it looks like everything just went flat. It looks like the budget office went to sleep, or what exactly happened? I mean, we used to have a Ben Akabueze who would work very, very hard to ensure that himself and the President Buhari then, would ensure that they maintain this January to December. But under this government, it looks like it doesn't really matter to them.
This is somehow. It is not just a function of this government. Right from independence, our budgetary practice has been flawed. It has been defective. Mm-hmm. The approach, first, the conceptual framework that budgeting is only the instrument for managing financial resources to achieve fiscal objectives is wrong. It's a very archaic or outdated approach to budgeting. Budgeting is actually the instrument for managing institutional resources to achieve public policy objectives. Until you change the trajectory and adopt this new approach, everything we are speaking here will be grammar. I'm sorry to tell you this. You can afford to, within the framework of what the president analyzed from here to tomorrow, you invite us here to next year, it will continue to play. The most fundamental reform agenda of any government in this country that means well, that is actually ready to deliver public services to the Nigerian citizenry, is a reform of our budgetary practice.
And what would you suggest?
One, you see what this funfair of going before the National, because the National Assembly are the representatives of the Nigerian people, going before the Nigerian to present a document. We don't need that. What the president did yesterday should have just been done by a proxy I think President Buhari did that.
Yeah, I mean, we had that
the president should be going
when the finance minister should just go and drop it.
Yes.
But people who started raising alarm that then President Buhari was ill. That's why he couldn't go to drop the budget.
Yes. The main thing the president should go to the National Assembly and present to us is the achievements of this document. What has this document achieved? What are the social effects? The president talks about execution of the budget. What is execution? Is it timely release of funds? And I asked you, Sumner, within the framework of what is obtainable, budget execution means timely release of funds, and it ends here. The question I'm asking, if you release timely, what is the guarantee? What is the element of monitoring and evaluation to say, look, Tom, I need this exact laptop you have in front of, and that is what I want to have. It's not obtainable in Nigeria. We don't have the essential elements of present day budgeting that will help us achieve national development. Unfortunately.
Well,
that's what I'm saying.
Important.
So I don't want to go into analyzing what I know. You'll bring me here tomorrow again. And
coincidentally, last year I actually brought you here. Well, Dr. Ogunsola, last year we actually had, the naira to dollar being pegged at 1,400. Now the government is repeating the same 1,400. Can you say that we've made some gains there, though? I mean, because as of last year, what was being sold at the open market, and of course, with CBN, isn't what is being. So it looks like there've been some gains there. But how realistic is that 1,400 to a dollar?
Yeah, that's why I said in that aspect they are being realistic. 1,400 is actually realistic, because as it is presently is 1,450 naira in the Nigerian official rate. So that is just a 50 naira, and compared to where we were at the beginning of this year and where we are now, we can still build on it. And also the signal that also shows that that is attainable is because of our foreign reserves that keep swelling up. We have now gotten to 7 years high. We can still do better, and that can make the dollar. In fact, we might achieve even 1,300 and 300 and something in that aspect.
All right, now let's talk about some of the allocations from the defense and security, which has 5.41 trillion, to infrastructure 3.5 trillion, to education 3.52 trillion, and health 2.48 trillion. What do you make of those allocations?
Just like I said, those allocations are just unattainable. If you look at the 20, because before you set, targets for yourself for a new year, you look at the past. How did you fare? The same security has been taking chunk of our budget. Despite that, we still have insecurity. So it means that we don't have enough funds to finance this chunk that is being budgeted for security.
Or the funds may be developing wings.
No, the funds, we didn't even get the money. The revenue to finance these expenditures were not even gotten. So those expenditures remain undone, and that's why we have.
Well, the government may disagree with you, because sometime in August, the president told us that he has met all his financial projections for the year, that they've earned more, they've met their revenue target.
And then he said another one now that contradicts what he said before. He said it's just 61%, and that is very poor performance.
All right.
So that is contradictory to what he said before.
Your view on that. The president saying in August that we've met all our revenue projections, and then by December we are hearing something else. What exactly is going on? I mean, Nigerians will be wondering.
The fundamentals are just wrong. I want to draw you to an incident that happened in the National Assembly some time ago. I can't remember when exactly. Senator Adams Oshomole moved a motion for direct funding of what is called the FOB, Forward Operation Basis, of the Ministry of Defense.
Yeah, for military.
And his colleagues shut it down. Can you remember? Very embarrassing situation. Now, these are the people that are facing, I want to talk in terms within the framework of security.
Yeah, that's taking the large chunk.
And that's taking the large chunk and how we can achieve. Now, these are the guys that are facing the enemy, so to say. They know the arms and ammo the enemy is using. They are the ones that can tell you, say, look, Oga, and it has happened several. I remember there was a general sometime who came out boldly to say, look, these are the equipment we need to fight. Under Buratai also, there was a general.
Yeah, I think
these are what we need.
And all of that.
They are not being supplied. There is no guarantee. That this money, when you, that's what I keep on telling you.
And the military can't say anything if the budgeted funds are not released to them. How do we even get to know? Because it's national security.
Another officer told me, look, in the U.S., no general from the chief of defense staff to the least controls 1 kobo of public fund, cash. The only money that comes to you is your salary. Everything is done. If, look, you say, we need uniform, we need ration, we need this quantum of armor. There's a military industrial complex that produces it and sends it in. Then the S&T supplies it directly. You understand? So that's what I'm telling you. There is need for comprehensive review of what we call budgeting in Nigeria. If we want to achieve this objective. I don't understand. I don't know if you understand what my perspective on these issues. You guys can continue to talk. How much is this? This is within this framework. I'll just sit down and laugh. I'll tell you, as long as we continue with this approach, national development.
Okay, so does it mean that our presidents, I mean, not only President Tinubu, our presidents, whether from Obasanjo to Jonathan to Yar'Adua,
from independence,
what it means is that they just follow this tradition that, okay, you just have to do a budget for people to hear, you just have to lay something and say something and not follow. Because like you said, the primary factor now should have been that Nigerians will hear how last year's budget went and where the monies didn't get into, and where we are now pushing the monies into to ensure that there's performance. So there's a problem of fiscal accountability.
Accountability.
Fiscal indiscipline.
Thank you very much. Which these are the key questions. If you change the approach to what I'm telling you, like, let me now lay it down. In Nigeria, you say you have, institutionally, you have budgeting office separate from the planning office.
Yes.
Which means, in Nigeria, we believe that budgeting is different from planning. But something like that is wrong, because budgeting is actually planning. You understand? If the planning process comes in short, medium, and long-term perspective, the nickname, the other names for short-term planning is budgeting. Do you understand?
Because it's annual.
You understand? While planning has this variation of medium and short, medium, and long. Budgeting is repetitive, annual repetitive cycle. So you must see budgeting as just short-term planning, and that would change the whole narrative.
So is that related to national development plans?
Yes, that's now there. You now know what should we do, what should we not be doing under budgeting. 2 things: developing public policy programs, implementing public policy programs. The third one is now operation control, ensuring that the human beings, the human and material resources you are procuring and deploying are actually doing what they're supposed to do. And that's why the major problem of governance in Nigeria is ineffective management of the civil service by the political class. And the fact that our budgets there's no relationship, you don't have a relationship between in fact, there's a complete disconnect between the government, because the civil service is not relating with the Nigerian people to develop budgetary programs. So there's a complete disconnect.
All right.
We just need to reform our budgetary practice.
All right, interesting perspective there. And now the National Assembly is supposed to be a check and balance. Do you think, Dr. Ogunsola, that this National Assembly will do justice to this budget? Because they are supposed to act on behalf of the people. These questions that both of you are raising here are supposed to be asked by both the senators and the House of, especially the House of Representatives, because that's the budgeting purview actually lies in that house more than the Senate. What do you expect from them?
But it's unfortunate that the National Assembly is busy politicking rather than doing oversight. Now, the news we hear from the National Assembly is everybody is standing on mandates, whereas they're supposed to be, holding government accountable, and they neglected that responsibility.
Holding the mandate accountable.
Yes, holding that mandate accountable, whereas they are standing on the mandate. So now, and we are entering into another season of politics. Definitely oversight function will be downplayed, because everybody is now fighting for how to return back to the house. So unfortunately, we are not having that. And I don't know how we can take a redirection so that our National Assembly can actually sit up and take the oversight function very seriously, more than the politicking that they do in the house.
Now, I just want to take you back to what President Tinubu has said in September, and I want to read his exact words. He says, "Today, I can stand here before you to brag. Nigeria is not borrowing. We have met our revenue target for the year, and we met it in August. right? And then we have the finance minister actually coming to say that, look, during an interactive session with the House of Representatives, that the federal government has recorded a wide revenue shortfall in the 2025 fiscal year, raising fresh concerns about the sustainability of Nigeria's public finances. How can the Nigerian public now trust their highest level of government officials if the president and the finance minister just seem not to be on the same page?
Well, if I will comment on that, though it's sensitive, but I think some persons are misinforming the president. And that is why you see that his words are contradicting against each other. So, and what the president is supposed to do is to completely, have a complete overhaul of people working around him. They make these mistakes and he pardons them, he overlooks, and then he just take the blame and all that. Mr. President needs to do something about it. He cannot continue to work with people that will continue to mislead him. It's not just about Nigeria, about the international community. The whole world is watching us, the way we are managing our funds. We still go back to them and borrow. Now, we are hearing that there's a wide gap. The president is even aware from his speech that there are a lot of leakages of revenue and nothing is done about it. There's no investigation as to where has this money gone to. We are going to say, okay, no more leakages, let's face forward. Things that should not be done like that. If there are revenue leakages, let us trace, let us investigate. What led to this? Where did this money grow wings to? So that we can actually tackle that. Talking about directing the Minister of Finance and all the, all other federal government agencies to sit up, that is not enough. They will tell you they will sit up, but I'm not sure they will sit up.
Especially when we are beginning to go into an election year gradually. Well, Dr. Jiko, I want you to talk about that because, we set a revenue target of about 40.8 trillion naira. And the finance minister is announcing to the country that what we are able to manage to raise out of that 40.8 trillion naira is 10.7 trillion naira. That's a huge shortfall. And some people may even call it an unpardonable shortfall for a government that says that they've had fiscal stability and they are very good in terms of financial matters, economics, and the president is seen as a financial wizard.
Sometimes you want to drag me again to what is happening, which I told you. But what I've told you is that this is just an example to tell you that it's a pure evidence that what we do in Nigeria is a caricature of what budgeting should actually be. You remember sometime during the budget, I want to always cite empirical examples.
Yes.
During the budget defense at the National Assembly last year, there was an uproar, an incident that happened where about 2 members of the, National Senate or House of Reps said, look, what you are, I can't remember which agency now. What you are reading to us is not what we have. Can you remember that incident?
Yeah, that became controversial.
Yes.
And
what you are reading, let me tell you, what the president, I'm sorry to say, what the president submitted to the National Assembly yesterday are just fictitious projections or whatever of projects they want to achieve. What we are going to next is that point where the members of the National Assembly will now meet with the civil servants and say, look, you guys have built your own fictitious projects. This is our time to build in our own. When they finish building in their own, we call it budget padding. That is what is going to play out. Yeah, then the moment they send it back to the president, there was even something that happened last year where the president owned up that what the National Assembly, what we usually call budget padding, usually the president will not own up that I am the responsible for this. But last year, for the first time, President Tinubu owned up that look, this, what you call budget padding, I am responsible. I'm in agreement with it. Now that means there is a teamwork. There's that agreement between the president and the, I might play out again this year. So we will have another budget padding. The president will go in and assent to it. Immediately he assents to it, you will see civil servants will start pricing houses in Abuja. Properties, they will start acquiring. Because there is no institutional guarantee. I keep on saying it, to say this money will be used for public purpose. It will go back into their pockets.
Doctor, it's a very poignant fact that you've brought in place, because for the very first time, we saw a House of Representatives refusing to sit this year because their constituency projects have not been funded. Doctor, I don't know if you remember,
I remember
saying that the president must fund constituency projects or not. And it's as a result of what he is saying that, look, by the time the National Assembly concludes with this budget, it may balloon into 60-something trillion because they will add their own projects and all of that. So how do we go out of this quagmire?
Yeah, the way forward is that the president needs to call a meeting of the leaders of the National Assembly and also some of his cabinet members that let us do things that are realistic. It is no more deceiving Nigerians. Nigerians are now wise enough to hold us accountable. So all these other, including this, the first thing the first question that's supposed to be answered is, how do we increase our revenue? They're all focusing on expenditure. So they're going to go and borrow 23 trillion and share the money or what? So he has to call a meeting and say, let us set targets that are achievable. Let us do things that we can show proof that this is what we have done, and not just about, self-interest.
Yeah, well, the finance minister, if I may quote him, the areas that he said are the things that led to this budgetary shortfall, revenue shortfall, is from weak oil and gas revenues, particularly lower than expected collections from petroleum profit tax and company income tax paid by oil and gas companies. Now, during the year, we had the FRS telling us that they had, generated enough, they've met their target, and then customs too also saying that they've met their target.
NNPC declared 5 trillion almost every month.
So we don't understand. I mean, there's a whole lot of questions that people are asking. Okay, if we are to focus on revenue generation now, and then these agencies are saying that they've met their revenues, and the president in September said that we had met our target, and then at the end of the year, we are seeing something different. Shouldn't some heads roll at the moment?
It is punishable.
Because, actually, the president is being put in bad light. I mean, in the midst of all these figures we hear every now and then, and the DG of the budget office, Tinubu, shouldn't he actually have questions to answer what is happening?
In other climes outside Nigeria, they resign honorably because they failed. But in Nigeria, they always wait for president to sack them. So if it were to be this way, if I were to be the finance minister or those people that have misled the president, I would just honorably resign and say, Mr. President, let some other people come and take over this office.
Okay. Sorry to say something. This analysis you guys are giving now, you are automatically exonerating the president that what these guys are doing is not actually what the president wants. I'm not doing that. Nothing says that these guys are actually not adhering to instruction of the president. I'm sorry to say. We must face the facts here. What if what this Tinubu you are talking about is doing, or Bagudu is doing, is actually what President Tinubu says they should do? What if that is the scenario? Because the president is surrounded by this. President Tinubu, people have said that President Tinubu is a strong character. And I know that. And for President Tinubu to have withstood President Obasanjo from 1999 to 1999 to 2007 shows that he's a very strong character. He is a man that knows his onions. So I don't want you Nigerians coming here and exonerating him from what is happening. The man knows what he's doing.
I actually appreciate the president for the courage of admitting that the performance of 2025 was poor. If he was the one instructing them to do all these wrong things, he would also still cover them when it's presented to the public. But he came out, with full courage that the performance was poor.
All right, gentlemen, as we try to close from now, very quickly, I want you to talk about the president saying that by 2026, specifically March, we won't be running multiple budgets. That's 2024, 2025, 2026 going all together. Your last take on that?
Well, if that will happen, I think some projects will just be, how will I put it now? They have to cancel some projects. They have to kind of delete some contracts that they've already done, because I can't see that happening within 90 days in the new year. Except if they will delete.
He's not optimistic, Doctor. I don't know if you are.
I keep on referring you guys to what has happened in Nigeria. There was a time in the civil service where the moment we enter December, you will see this flurry of activities to
workshops, all sorts of things.
Commit unexpended because they said because it will go back into the chest.
Yes.
What happened? If that practice was on, you don't tell me you have 2024, broadening into, you are running 2024, you just roll in 2024. If you didn't, you roll it to the chest for 2025. If after 20, you didn't expend this for, you roll it into 20. So that's why I tell you that it's a complete sham. It's a complete mockery of the practice.
Well,
let
me just ask you guys a political question very quickly. I mean, before you go, I mean, could it be that the president didn't have a proper understanding of the federal bureaucracy, and this is his first time as someone who's running the federal government, and maybe that could have affected his understanding, and maybe from 2026 we may see a difference?
No, I wouldn't accept that the president does not have. He has good experience. He was governor of Lagos for 8 years.
Yeah, but Lagos is different from the federal bureaucracy.
Yeah,
I mean,
but
Lagos is not Nigeria.
Almost the same bureaucracy. His budgetary system is constitutional, both at the state level and at the federal level. So he is not bereaved of experience of how these things are managed. My own stake is that the people that are managing this financial, especially the fiscal policy around the president, they are not doing their job.
All right, and I would like to hear from you too.
Because honestly, it's something I have had first-hand experience of the bureaucracy in Lagos State. It's almost at par with federal bureaucracy. Lagos bureaucracy is top-notch, and he ran it for 7 years.
Yes.
So there is no excuse. He has all the experience. That's why I tell you that whatever is happening is deliberate. I'm sorry to say. He knows.
Maybe politics has got under the way.
Maybe we Nigerians tend to take it for granted that, look, this man, I'm sorry to say that, look, he is here to serve the public. What if he's not here to serve the public? So well, I'm sorry to say.
I mean, you're going political now, and I'm afraid we'll just have to end the conversation there. But thank you so much. Dr. Emeka Ejikoye is a public budgeting specialist. He's a public administrator, and he's got a huge chunk of experience in public budgeting. And of course, Dr. Akin Ogunsola is an economist, and is always here for us. Thank you so much for your wealth of experience. I mean, gentlemen, I couldn't have had a better team than both of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
I just hope the members of the public will continue to demand accountability from those in power, whether appointed or elected officials.